Hi everyone, this is Alec from AJ Farms, and today we are here to start our tomato seeds. It is one of our favorite times of the year, though we do have a little bit of a problem. As you can see, we have a lot of varieties that we want to start this year, and honestly this is also after narrowing it down, but we don't quite have enough space to plant everything. So I kind of wanted to talk you through my process of how I narrowed it down, at least to this selection, and then maybe that'll help you figure out how to narrow down your varieties if you also have the same problem this year, but also give me a chance to show off what varieties that we're going to be growing this year. As I mentioned earlier, I have way more tomato varieties than I have space to plant in the garden. This is me narrowing it down to my mostly final selections, but I do have a handful of seeds that I have to the side that I managed to kind of process of elimination my way out. And even with some of these, I still would like to grow them, like with the yellow pear tomato, because I know it does very well in this area and is very prolific. So I would get a good crop out of it, but my mom is the only one in the house that actually eats cherry tomatoes or smaller tomatoes like that, and I already have 3 varieties that I know I'm going to be growing, so there's no way that she'd be able to eat all of that on her own. I know we're trying to sell at the farmer's market a little bit, but it's also just kind of, will we get a chance to get down there, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that we still have to work out. But how I managed to narrow down to this selection was I first broke down my seeds by type, and what I mean by that is with my tomatoes, I have slicing tomatoes, which are the big ones back here. I have sauce tomatoes, which are this middle row right here, and then I have cherry tomatoes, which are these 3 right here. So with cherry tomatoes, they grow a lot of tomatoes on one plant, so I don't need that many, and honestly, 3 varieties is still pushing it a little bit, but the varieties that I'll be growing this year are the Super Sweet 100, which is a staple in this garden. I think I've grown this since my first year with the big garden, and it has always done very well. I have the Sun Gold cherry tomato, which is slightly newer for me. I think I've grown it for the past 2 years, and it's done amazingly both years. It does split a little bit, so you have to be careful with your watering and making sure that you're harvesting them. Usually if you get them about a day early, you don't have to worry about splitting, but those do pretty well, and I like the color, so it gives me a little bit of variety. Unfortunately, there's no picture, so I'll try to pop one up on the screen, but this one is a nice golden yellow color. And then lastly, I have the large red cherry tomatoes, which I've actually had these seeds for a while. These are 3 years old now, so I do have a second packet if I need it, just in case. But those are the 3 cherry tomato varieties that I'll be growing. In this next row, we have the sauce tomatoes, which for me was a little bit easier to narrow down because the sauce tomatoes are my favorite, and those are the ones that I grow for me. Like, I will eat sauce tomatoes. I love tomato sauce. And I do have 1 bed for these, so 4 varieties is going to be pushing it, though I do have a little bit of an overflow space in the ground that I can put some extras. So for the sauce tomatoes, the Roma and the San Marzano are my staples. They do very well, they make great sauce, and they taste amazing. And I grow these 2 every year. Though the San Marzano is the newer one. I've grown Roma since year 1. And then the other 2 that I really wanted to try are the Amish paste, because they get up to 8 ounces, so they're a bigger sauce tomato. And then the Super Sauce Hybrid, which is apparently a massive sauce tomato, and I've seen some pictures online, they get huge. So this packet says some fruits can weigh up to 2 pounds. I've seen someone grow one that was 22 ounces, so very close. But I want to try getting some nice big sauce tomatoes because it makes the process of making sauce a lot easier. Last but certainly not least, we have our beefsteak varieties, or our slicing tomatoes, and these are the biggest ones that you'll usually grow in your garden. And with this, I have 7 varieties, and 7 varieties will not fit, unfortunately. So with the beefsteak, I know that I'll be growing the actual variety beefsteak, which I have on the edge right here. I have grown this one since year 1, and it does pretty well. I have gotten some pretty big tomatoes out of these, but they're not averaging over a pound, which I would like. These seeds are rather old, though. I've had these for 5 years, so I will be needing to get a new packet soon. And then next, I have the Super Beefsteak, which this one grows. It's just another beefsteak. I believe this one is more disease resistant and grows a lot of fruit that are more than a pound, which is what I'm looking for. We have Burpee Super Steak Hybrid right here. This one, fruits average 1 to 2 pounds, which is why I was really interested in this one. And I don't know, I know the seed packet is open, but I can't remember if I actually had any outside last year. We have the Bodacious Hybrid from Burpee. This is a new one from last year. And this one gets 10 to 12 ounce fruits, but what really interested me for this one was it says no cracking on the back. Now I do have an issue with my tomatoes cracking because our summers are very, I don't know how to say it other than wonky. They'll be super hot, super humid, but we'll also get no rain. So then we're trying to water the garden, and then we'll suddenly get absolute downpours, which of course a whole bunch of water into your tomatoes at once like that is a recipe for disaster because it can promote disease, it can cause them to crack and split open, and we're trying to avoid as many pests as we had last year in the garden. And one of those measures would be to find tomato varieties like this one that don't crack as often. Now this one right here, we have the Mortgage Lifter. And I will admit, the name for this one is what caught my attention. This one, I believe, is a reddish pink variety, and it will usually get tomatoes that are about 1 pound up to 2 pounds, and the name apparently comes from somebody was breeding this variety of tomatoes and was able to pay off their mortgage by selling those tomatoes. I don't think I'll actually be able to pay off a mortgage in today's day and age selling tomatoes, but it doesn't hurt to give it a try. I haven't actually tasted these before, but I've heard a lot of people growing them and they're very popular. So I'm hoping that I can get some good tomatoes off of this. Now the last two varieties that I have right here are my maybe pile. And I say maybe because I do not have space to grow this many varieties, but I really want to have some color with my tomatoes. So the first one is Jubilee, which I've never grown before. Last year for color I had the Lemon Boy, which my mom said she didn't like as much, so I want to try a different one. Though if I can find a Lemon Boy tomato, I kind of want to sneak it in. Just because it makes really pretty tomatoes. This is, the Jubilee is an All-American Selections winner, and let's see. So it doesn't say anything about disease resistance or anything. I think this is an heirloom tomato, which means it's been grown this variety for at least the past 50 years as is. So I'm hoping this one will do well. This is completely new to me, so I have no experience with it, but I've heard good things about it. And then another one for color, and it's also new, is the Black Crim. Usually for a darker purple tomato, I'll grow the Black Prince, but I haven't been able to find seeds for that one, so I usually have to buy starts. And I've heard good things about the Black Crim. I've never grown it before, but I do want to try it. And then all of my beef steaks, except for Bodacious, I believe. Nope, all of them. So all of my beef steaks are indeterminate tomatoes, and what that means is that they will just keep growing and growing and growing as long as the weather holds out. And once it gets frosty and cold, then they'll just die back. So I'm going to lay these out a little bit nicer so you can see them one more time, and then I will show you what else we're also working on getting planted. So here's one last look at the tomato varieties that will be growing this year. I picked these out either because I've heard really good things about them online, so they sound really promising for our area, or I've grown them before, so they're tried and true varieties and I know they do well, because I am limited on space and I want to grow a lot more than I have space for, so I really have to make sure that I'm growing things that have good promise to do well or I know will do well, so I'm not wasting space on a plant that'll either not survive very long or just kind of do eh. I want to make sure I'm getting the most produce out of my space, so I'm using it as effectively as possible. Alright, so other than the tomatoes, we are starting one more thing, which I did need to get started a little bit sooner, but better late than never. We have a long enough season, so it's not a problem. So the last few things that we're planning on getting started inside are our mild peppers and our sweet peppers, so our bell peppers. And after that, I think, other than maybe like a few things here or there, we're pretty much ready to start planting outside once the weather warms up. So for our mild pepper varieties, we'll be growing jalapenos. We have the Big Guy Hybrid and the Jalapeno Gigantica, I think that's how you say that. And then for our sweet pepper varieties, we have the Emerald Giant, the Garden Leader Monster Bell, and the Crispy Hybrid. We also have the orange and yellow Peter peppers up here that we didn't get a chance to start yet, so we'll definitely be doing those either today or tomorrow. We'll be doing those very, very soon. So for our peppers, we usually start them in our double cup methods. That's where you have the two red solo cups inside of each other, or just any plastic cup. They don't have to be solo cups. And that gives them enough space to start growing, and then you can transplant them out and separate them later into their own containers. We're still planning on doing that with our peppers. For our tomatoes, we usually do that, But for the sake of saving space and making them easier to transfer around between the container we usually grow them in, since we don't put our tomatoes in the grow tent, and outside, we're actually thinking about using the larger Jiffy greenhouse kit. This one's a 5x5. We usually start 5 seeds of any particular variety anyway, so I'm thinking that this would actually work out pretty well. I do have 2 of them that will hold most of our tomatoes, and then I'm thinking about starting I believe it was the cherry tomatoes I was going to start in the cups, since I don't have enough to fill up a whole greenhouse and I do not need that many plants. So I'm going to go ahead and get the water going for the peat pellets, and then I'm going to show you how we're going to plant the rest of the cherry tomatoes, because I also want to talk a little bit about the soil mixture that we're using. Alright, so I did want to actually show you what's inside this greenhouse kit, since it's a little bit different than the 12-cell kit that I showed in the last video, which I do have another one of right here. The biggest difference is in the size of the peat pellets. This is the 36mm peat pellet. Whoops. There we go. That comes in the 12-cell one. And this is the 42mm peat pellet that comes in this 5x5 kit. The 42mm are a lot bigger, which means they're easier, or they can hold bigger plants more easily, which is perfect for the tomatoes. What I also like, which is something I was worried about, is that this kit comes with little labels, and I have mine drawn up right here. They're little plasticky paper label things. I'm not really sure how to describe the material, but I have mine all written up so I can mark out which seeds are in which rows once I expand the pellets. And then I did misspeak in the last segment. I thought I had enough sauce and beefsteak tomatoes that I'd be planting together. I actually don't. So what I'll be doing is planting my 4 varieties of sauce tomatoes along with the 1 variety of cherry tomatoes together, and then all of my beefsteaks in another greenhouse. So get that situated, and then I will see you a little bit later. As I wait for the peat pellets to expand in the background, I did want to show you a little bit about the soil mixture that I use for starting my seeds. Now this is a mixture that I've made myself. As you can see, it's nice and light and fluffy, which is great for seeds that are just getting started, because these seeds have very delicate roots, and they're not able to push through hard soils like clay. Now this is lightly moistened, so it'll make a nice ball if you try to ball it up, but it falls apart easily if you press on it. And that's exactly what you want. Now this is just pre-moistened. Once I plant my seeds, I will moisten this a little bit more. But this soil mixture is made with cocoa coir, and I get them in pre-packaged bricks like this. They're very dry and compressed. So I'll usually add about 3.5 to 4 quarts of water, let that expand, and if I have too much extra water, I'll drain that out. But then I break it apart, mix in my perlite, which are these little white bits. And in this mix, I have a little bit of vermiculite mixed in just to help with drainage and water retention. And then I mix in a little bit of the Osmocote fertilizer, which this one is almost empty, but it looks like this. And I make sure to get the one for vegetables and flowers. Oh. There we go. Yes, I get the one for vegetables and flowers. And it works really, really well. I use this kind of as the starter fertilizer to get it going when I first plant my seeds, and then I will switch over to a liquid fertilizer that I mix myself, which if you want me to go more into detail on, just let me know in the comments and I will make a video on that. So as we're waiting for those peat pellets to keep going, I'm going to go ahead and plant the other 2 cherry tomato varieties, the large red cherry and the sun gold cherry, in the cups with soil. So I have my cups labeled already. So I'm going to go ahead and fill these up. I'm going to have to figure out how to do it without hitting my camera too much. So let me adjust and scoot over here. There we go. So I'm just going to fill it in with soil. Pack that down gently. Nope. There we go. And do the same with the other one. You don't want to pack the soil too tightly, you just want to press it down gently like this. And then if I get any on the outside cup, I'll just dump it out back into the reservoir that I'm using to fill the soil. Okay, so I have my 2 cups. I'm going to make sure I find my label so I don't get them mixed up, because the last thing I want to do is have the wrong variety. And this right here I have my large red cherry, and what I like to do when I'm at this point is I'll take either the end of a pen or a marker or something, and I'll kind of gently put in 5 little holes to plant my seeds in. Now what I do, since I don't actually need all 5 seeds, I usually try to aim for 2 or 3 of each variety. I'll just put 1 seed in each hole, and if I get 5, then I'll just have to either give them away to friends or something like that. But if I get 2 or 3, then I have just as many as I need for my garden. Now this is the large red cherry, so I'm going to make sure I have my right seeds. And I will drop 1 into each hole. There's 1. Oh, I think I got 2 in there. That's fine. These are older seeds, so it wouldn't hurt if I drop 2 in each. Just means that I might have more once they do sprout. Then I cover up my seeds to make sure they're buried, because tomato seeds, like with most vegetable seeds, don't actually need any light to germinate. So you could leave these in a dark place as you're waiting. And then what I'll do is usually water them in really well. You want to make sure you water your seeds very well. I'll go grab my watering can so I can do that. Okay, so I have my watering can now, so what you do is make sure to water the seeds nice and deeply, but you also want to be gentle with it, because you don't want to disturb them and knock them around from where you had them. You want to make sure you get them nice and wet so they have good contact with moisture so they sprout quickly. And what's really awesome about the double cup method is if you have a little too much water, it will run into the bottom cup and you can just empty that out later. But what you do next, or what I like to do next, this step's technically optional, is to make sure that my seeds stay moist. I will cover them with a plastic bag, and any plastic bag or some kind of saran wrap will do. You want to make sure there's a little bit of airflow, but mostly you want to keep all that moisture and heat trapped in there. Now the next thing that you can do, there's actually 2 options. The first is to just put them on a heat mat, which is optional because tomatoes don't need too much bottom heat to germinate, but you might have them germinate a little faster. The next thing you can do is put them under a grow light. Now, as I said earlier, they don't actually need light to germinate, but once they sprout, they do need light. And having them under that grow light, they'll just be under that light as soon as they sprout, and they'll get all the light they need to grow. For these, I'm going to have them in a separate container that I made myself. I don't think I made a video about it, but it's just a big blue storage container that I lined with aluminum foil to help the light refract back onto the seeds. And I have a small grow light in there, and I'll put these under that. They tend to do a little bit better in there than they do in my grow tent, so whatever the tomatoes like, I just kind of follow what they want to do. So I'm going to finish planting all of my seeds, and then I will put them under the grow light, and I will hopefully have some updates for you in a few days once they start sprouting. Until then, be sure to check out our Instagram at AJ Farms if you want to have more frequent updates, and we will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.